And a very exciting panel being moderated by Nikunj Dalmia as we speak, and with a whole host of interesting guests as well. VK Sharma, Rajesh Gopinathan, Amitabh Kant and SN Subrahmanyan talking at the IEC.
Started ranking our states. In the first year we did this, Gujarat came number 1. The very next year, Andhra beat Gujarat. And the third year, Telangana beat Andhra and Gujarat. But the good thing was that the mineral-rich states of Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh did extremely well. They came 4th and 5th. And my belief is that if eastern part of India starts doing well, these are really the rich states of our country in mineral resources. India will do extremely well in the long run. But there have been a series of structural reforms which will make Indian economy very efficient. You know, the goods and services tax, the RERA, which is a very major reform which people do not realize now, and the insolvency and bankruptcy code. These are very major structural reforms which India was crying out for the last several years. These have been carried out, and in the long run, this will make Indian economy extremely efficient. But the challenge really is that if you want to grow at high rates of 9 to 10% over a 3-decade period, year after year, you need to do two things, to my mind. No country in the world has grown without exports. I mean, Japan, Korea, China, all have grown on the back of exports. So you need to push for exports, and that would require size and scale. This is important. Size and scale of manufacturing and penetrating global markets is important. And secondly, you talked about the TCS story. You need 100 champion companies like TCS. And I think the government needs to back them. Nowhere in the world have countries grown big without private sector champions. And look at Korea, look at Japan, all of them have champion companies. And therefore, we need to work in partnership with private sector companies to create 100 TCSs which will penetrate global markets. Until you don't do that penetration of global markets through your large companies, it will be very difficult to grow at 9 to 10% over a long period of time.
And with Mr. Kant managing responsibility, trust me, there's nothing Amitabh Kant, right? There's everything which is possible. But I'm going to shift focus to not a private sector champion, but a public sector champion, LIC. Clearly, in a growing economy, the need of safety and care is very, very important. So your industry or your sector has seen the maximum disruption. Private sector has kicked in, technology has kicked in. LIC was always riding on brand and distribution. What has been your experience? Where is that industry headed? Because for a growing economy, you certainly need safety and care.
You are diverting. I was thinking that you will ask me that whether LIC will go global.
Oh, I didn't know you're giving me a headline then. Yeah. Are you planning to go public also? I'll be very curious to know.
See, I will...
No, why don't you answer the question first? Are you planning to go public? Are you planning to go global?
No, that is not the point here. See, insurance sector as such has been, I will say that it has always been ahead of the curve. So far as the GDP of the country is concerned, if we see from 1960 onwards, so the growth of insurance sector has always been roughly about 1 to 2% more than the GDP growth. Today also, that is the scenario. Insurance sector is growing in the double digit, 33 lakh crore. That is the asset base of insurance industry today. It has from a few thousand crore it had started. What I feel that in services sector, insurance industry can play the driver's role in what is that 5 trillion vision or agenda is there. If we see what we have done, we grew from 1% of the GDP to roughly about 2% plus of the GDP in terms of the total, both life and general. We have certainly been left behind. So much to do in the agenda. If we see the potential and the performance, we have to catch up very fast. Even if insurance industry grows by double digit like 15% plus, we will be able to add up, within 5 years we will be able to add up more than 1% in GDP. That is one part. Second part is that if we have to truly become a like a partner in this 5 trillion economy, or as Mr. Kant has been saying, insurance industry also has to be global. Very few people know, I'm not in general insurance side, but I take pride that our general insurance, reinsurance, is 10th largest company in the world. Very silently. We earn not less, our international business base is roughly about $4 to $5 billion in dollar terms. Slowly, we have also been roughly 14 countries. Very few people know that as early as 60s, we had invested in Kenya, we had invested in Mauritius, we had invested in Fiji, the places many people might not have gone. And we take pride that even till today in Fiji, our tower is the office and residence of Indian High Commission, in Mauritius, in Kenya, and in Fiji. So, given up opportunity, insurance sector has the capacity to grow. In Nepal, we are the second largest company. In Bangladesh, we have started. Everywhere there is potential, and we can expand and we can earn for the country. Okay. This is one part. Second part is that our knowledge, our technology base, our skill based in insurance sector, this itself is an item of export. We can, insurance technology and other, we can export to the other countries and we can earn out of it.
Skill and scale. So we'll talk about it with Rajesh also. But Mr. Mariwala, the India story is centered around, in the India romance, if I may use that word, is centered around consumer. You can't hear me. So the India romance is actually centered around consumption. Okay. Just pardon me. This is a big auditorium. So in the India romance, in a sense, is really centered around consumers. But if I look at the Indian per capita consumption, it is still below $2,000. It seems to be slowing down. The engine is also slowing down. And if I look at parallel economies, which are of $2 trillion in the world, their per capita consumption is way higher than what we currently have in India. Why is that? And when do you think our per capita income will hit that J curve beyond which it will start only growing?
So I think it's a question of economic growth, and the growth has to cover all sections of the society. In the last few years, we've seen much more growth happening at the upper end in terms of the rich people. But I think as the economy grows, and I'm quite sure it will happen, it has to filter down all the way to the lower levels, and then only the per capita consumption can go up, Because if it is only in a few hands, then the per capita consumption, and it's very important that growth is wide-based, because it can lead to a revolution otherwise. If just the rich become richer and the poor do not improve their standard of living, then this whole consumption story is up for big question mark, So I think it's very important that the growth is filtering down all the way to the bottom at the village level. And I think whatever initiatives the government is doing in terms of infrastructure improvement, Mr. Gadkari is here and he's done a fantastic job in this area, whether it is waterways or whether it is ports or roads. And I think all these are going to improve rural linkages. There is also another. We've been reading, at least after the elections, results were out that the rural economy is in distress. Maybe the farmer side, but overall, if you look at the FMCG industry, which is my industry, where the rural growth is higher than the urban growth. So maybe the service economy in the rural is better off. Maybe certain part of the areas in some states where the monsoon have not been good, the farmers are under distress. But overall, rural is not as bad as one is making out to be, at least from our end at least. When we do business, we are seeing higher growth rates in rural, which is a good sign, and we want rural to grow, because that's where the most of the Indian population is. So I think it's very important to broad base, I would say, the growth at different levels of income. I'm sure, poor will become middle class, middle will become rich, but I think there has to be higher delta and increase of incomes at lower ends, which is very crucial for our economy to become much larger economy, a more stable economy, more robust economy.
Okay. Rajesh, now the Indian IT sector has played a very large role in India's GDP growth. But given that there is a disruptive wave in technology, we are looking at IoT, digitization, robot or artificial intelligence has taken over. Do you think the robust model of the Indian IT sector is here to stay? And just to supplement one more point here, the Indian IT sector also has been creating a lot of job. TCS is currently one of the biggest employers in India, about 4 lakh people. So do you think given there is a transition in technology, could there be a challenge to job hiring, Mr. Kant? Job hiring, we'll talk about it, but I want to hear from the man himself.
I think, Nikunj, the way to think about it is that we have now inserted ourselves as a global force in the global technology arena. And while the nature of technology is that it will keep on changing, as long as we remain disciplined